grown conversation about how the bulk of BWE and the Black Manosphere are mirroring each other into the permanent underclass. I've made this video 5 or 6 times. I want to be compassionate because as Sammy Bliss brought to our attention, and we've done some conversations, a lot of this going back and forth between Black adults, men and women, has to do with the 5 stages of grief. We are looking at what we were sold in terms of the American dream and in terms of a dream of Black love and in terms of what life is supposed to be like. We are finding that we cannot get to it and we are pointing fingers at each other. And we are going through denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and failing to get to acceptance, the 5th stage. And we've talked a lot about what the 5th stage looks like, and the previous videos about what the 5th stage does not look like, because there are people settling into depression, and they're settling into depression in 2 distinct ways with a transitional way that we talked about. One, that depression stage is when the ego has to admit defeat, and some people just decide to nest there. And their attitude is, if I can't get my way, I won't play. So what they then do is engage in any number of vices and coping mechanisms to waste time and fill space until they die, because they have decided that they refuse to accept a world, moving on to acceptance, in which they cannot have their way. They have decided to stay in their loss and their grief and just cope with it instead of dealing with it. And what ends up happening there is that it is self-destructive. A transition that you see, though, in which anger begins to get back into position, is if you come to people with another alternative. They will tell you all the reasons and all the people why they can't do anything for themselves. A whole bunch of people up there living rent free because they have not let go. Their ego then takes a stand on, I can choose what I want to do to cope. Says I can't have my way, I'm not going to try to do anything. I'm going to check out of society. I'm gonna just sort of do what I want to do till I die. That's my goal. That's how my ego is going to recoup itself. I'm going to spend time complaining about all the stuff that other people did to me instead of actually taking the energy I'm using complaining and actually going through the acceptance, letting this go, and finding out what reality has for me. Because, like I said, what is supposed to happen is that the rest of your character eventually comes and rescues your ego. The rest of your courage, your fortitude, and your vision has to come rescue the ego. The ego does not take well to defeating anybody. And of course, big losses can include deaths of loved ones, loss of businesses, losses of jobs that are meaningful, racism, and the loss of human dignity that comes when someone treats you less than. All those things can trigger grief experiences that we can't always do anything about. And I should also say, it's worth another video, but acceptance, the 5th stage of grief, is not about accepting injustice that we can change. It may take a long time, but that's not the same thing. Acceptance is just, this is the reality. I can't change the reality, but then I can be clear-minded and say, okay, my ego is not attracted to trying to change what cannot be changed. Now I got all these other options I can look at, and I've let go of that trying to change reality enough to be able to work with what is. People settle into coping mechanisms. You meet 40 and 50 and 60-year-old people that are just going in circles in their life. If you break it down, a lot of times you find out there's a loss there somewhere, and they just are finding ways to cope, and they are not willing to let that go. One is dead and one is alive. I have 2 people on my mind. One finally made it to that 5th stage. The other died horrifically, sitting there making up reasons not to move out of depression and that stage of despair. But people who are complaining and complaining and complaining are transitioning toward active despair, which is when that anger and that despair begins to do something very interesting. I used Adolf Hitler, Donald Trump, and Stockton Rush as my examples for this. Men who, having met some check their ego would not accept, have to come to terms with that reality partially. They have to accept defeat, but they will latch on to a piece of that and destroy anything and everything in their way. Except, of course, Adolf Hitler ran up against the Allies and couldn't get his way. So his reaction: if Germany did not conquer, she deserves to be destroyed. He gave orders to that effect that were fortunately countermanded by some other more sensible people around him still. Um, Donald Trump, 81 million people said, no, we will not have you to reign over us. No. What did he try to do? Get the Capitol wrecked. Try to call on the phone, talking about, I just need 11,780 votes. As a whole different video. Well, no, I'll get to it later on, actually. Put a pin there because I want you to see something as this specifically regards Black men trying to take down Black women and not noticing that white men, when it serves their purpose to do so, will protect said Black women occasionally. Doesn't happen always, but it's something to be noted. We'll get to it later. Donald Trump wasn't willing to accept that. So he was willing to subvert the entire process of American politics. He's willing to subvert the entire process of how America peacefully transfers power. In other words, he's willing to burn the Constitution like Stockton Rush and their company every year burned care up in a coffin in a ritual about destroying the idea that men of the Bohemian Club should care about the needs of others. And of course, Stockton Rush eventually took on physics itself because he couldn't be an astronaut. You're going to take on 12,500 feet of water in a carbon fiber submarine that's been snap, crackling, and popping like a bunch of Rice Krispies for the last 3 trips. Y'all already know what happened. But see, the thing is, these men took people with them. Adolf Hitler by the millions, Donald Trump by the handfuls, and Stockton Rush took 4 people with him. Active despair is deadly, especially in men. But as I said in the previous video, active despair is what is causing the escalation of violent rhetoric between the Manosphere and some members of BWE. A lot of the old school members of that have gotten out of there because they see what's going on. So let's see how we're going to work this out. Let's look at this in terms, how are you going to end up in a underclass class doing this? Now, I'm going to send y'all through the 5 stages of grief because some of you have never heard this before. I want you to go on Google. And I want you to Google net worth of African Americans. Net worth of African Americans. Look at where it is. Look at where it's projected to be. What is net worth? When you pay all your debts, do you have anything left? Basically, your assets and your debts are compared. And whatever you have left is what your net worth is. If your debts are bigger than your assets, then you have some net worth. If your assets are bigger than your debts, you have some net worth. If your debts are bigger than your assets or even, you're at zero. Go look at the collective net worth of African Americans and look at where it's going to be in 2030. Denial, this is not it. This is a conspiracy theory to discourage Black people. This is racism. Anger, how dare this be put out here to embarrass us, and how dare you bring it to our attention? Bargaining, but I know plenty of rich Black people. Put in your favorite celebrity, put in your favorite entertainer. Depression, oh snap, we're done. Ain't no way. Acceptance, just because this is our collective state doesn't mean this has to be my individual state. Maybe I need to start viewing content and spending my time with people who are actually not going to individually be in this bag in 2030. But see, this by itself is why BWE and the Black Manosphere are going to both mirror each other into the permanent underclass. That by itself. Because when you're pointing fingers at the other person, I guarantee you that does not build you anything. When you are ideating about destroying the other person, I guarantee you cannot build anything, which means your children don't start with anything. That's the end of the game. It's done. This is always what active despair does to people, passive or active. I mean, you can toke up, smoke up, drink up, eat up, sex up, all the resources you have till you run it off and leave nothing to your children. You can do that too. That's more, again, vices and coping. Or you could actively go out there and lose assets. Fresh and Fit got deplatformed. Adigan Forrest got his tail handed to the ADL and the FBI. Just waiting on Anton Daniels to do some abomination before I go get him. But because that clip where he wanted to have all single mothers wiped out was on somebody else's channel, I'm not trying to wipe out that person. So I have to wait. But see, here's the thing about active despair. It doesn't care. That reality doesn't mean anything. This is why former President Trump is up here on Truth Social, up here threatening folks and carrying on like he can't be put in jail on any day, like Judge Truth can, and whoever the judge in Georgia and whoever the judge in New York are not on the phone talking about, okay, so he doesn't threaten who? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to get our trial dates together. And then when we throw him behind, when we revoke his bail, he'll be at your house for 3 months, your house for 3 months. And what I mean, your house is your prison house for 3 months. And your house, he doesn't understand how the law works. But no does he care. He gonna keep going because active despair has a life of its own. It really does. It becomes a lifestyle. Just like the fifth stage of actual acceptance allows you a different lifestyle, so does active despair. And so you are in the, can we be real? You are in the brokest single collective in the United States of America. Now, there are more broke white people, but their collective is not. You have the least capital, which means every other group of people, even immigrants that come here from somewhere else, can quickly outmaneuver you politically, outmaneuver you in education, and outmaneuver you in industry. And if you get outmaneuvered in those three, you're gonna be in a permanent underclass. This is the collective fate of African Americans if we keep going where we're going. And there's nothing that Black woman empowerment or the Black Manosphere are talking about that's going to change that trajectory at all. And since they refuse, they have decided since they can't do anything but just grift their way out, they are refusing to talk about solutions that can work for the collective. Their followers are going to mirror each other right in. So let me also talk to you about some impossibilities. You have people on both sides that have the temerity to suggest wiping out millions of the opposite side. Let me tell you what, that's not going to happen. First of all, there are not enough. You're not going to happen because the other part of this is even the suggestion of this is denial. Given that there are people perfectly still willing to use us for our chattel value in prison and as consumers, you can forget it. It's like Donald Trump, if he could do it, would have Madam D.A. Fani Willis wiped out, but he messed up and offended Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, and the Secretary of State here, Mr. Matt Raffensperger. And side note to side note, if you happen to live in the North or the West, you need to understand what I'm saying. You really want to get yourself into trouble. You really want to get your behind tanned. Go insult a Southern white man. Till you get to the south of Italy and the north of Scotland, you will not get into more trouble than that. You're going to be some Yankee whose grandfather was an immigrant going down there and messing with the good old boy system and trying to make them look like fools over 11,780 votes and talking to lips other people about their process isn't legit. Madam D.A. Fani Willis is useful. So the governor will protect her for now. And my divestment and hypertrophy sisters, don't get comfortable. Understand this is temporary. Goldman Sachs sees that among Black people, Black women are the most interested in doing something about being in a permanent underclass. So they are putting out $10,000 to 1 million Black women in loans. Don't get comfortable. Make the best use of your opportunities. Black men are not going to be wiped out because they make good prison slaves. 1/3 of Black men are felons, meaning that jobs are not going to be open unless they choose to employ each other. Black men actually do own more business than Black women. I heard the Angry Biracial actually got that wrong in one of his recent videos. Black men own 2 times as many businesses as Black women. But in terms of them being in a position where they can be funded, Black women are beating the Black bail business on average. Now, obviously, Black men are going to say here, but we can't get capital from banks. Okay, then what you need to do is go talk to the men that you give capital to in sports and entertainment and tell them, if you don't fund this, we out. That's something that has to be developed among the men. No one's going to give you anything if you do not have a system within yourselves to do that. Do y'all understand how the rules of capitalism work? And ladies, we are only lagging the foolery by a few years. We don't always support each other either. We're only lagging the foolery by a few years. Goldman Sachs didn't say they were giving money to all Black business owners. They're going to work with 1 million that they can train and take in and teach how this thing works themselves. They're going to make sure. And if we bop this, that's it. We'll be done by 2030 with this. That's when that program ends. That's it. And I best believe Goldman Sachs expects to see a return on its investment. And if it doesn't, there is going to be a lot to pay for Black women, all of us, if that does not work out. Trust. It's not that the people that will protect you as chattel love you. This is why it will not be permitted for Black men and Black women to do their genocide ideations. Unlike Adolf Hitler, Donald Trump, and Stockton Rush, we as a collective have no capital compared to other groups. Therefore, we will not get our will done in a capitalistic way in this society until we decide to get serious about rebuilding our asset base. People do not realize that one of the reasons Booker T. Washington was able to get so much done in the late 19th and early 20th century is because he had control of a big asset base. And he had people that were beholden to him, and he had put money into making sure that happened. He had moved money to different places and so forth. And even though there were white men who absolutely hated him, couldn't do anything about it. He knew how to play the capitalist game. Couldn't do anything about it. That's how it works. If you are content being the biggest consumers and building nothing for yourself, you will continue to be outwitted. You will continue to be outmaneuvered, and you will continue to be at the bottom. And if you continue to sit there and point fingers at your brothers and your sisters because you're being there, you will mirror each other straight into the permanent underclass. These are the people that you're listening to. You up here. Anton Daniels supposed to be a finance man. Up here talking about genocide. Cynthia G is supposed to be talking about Black women empowerment. And you talking about slaughtering your babies in the womb. That's what Margaret Sanger wanted you to do, by the way. We've done this video before. This is what she wanted to see Black people exterminated. Black people are like weeds and should be exterminated. She would have loved to have a Cynthia G out here convincing Black women to do it so that they didn't have to sterilize and all the rest. They would love that. Keep on having sex with men who are not going to provide for you and just abort the Black boys as revenge. And for that matter, because you can't control the father, abuse that child and beat down that child's image before they get to be older. I've lived and seen Black mothers cussing their baby boys down the street because they can't control the father. That happens. It's not every case, but it does happen. And if you were a Black man who went through that, then you're abandoned by your father and hated by your mother. It's real easy to settle into the fourth stage of grief from there. It's no excuse, though, because there is no one living that is not going to have an opportunity to choose better. That opportunity is going to happen. And if you invest in being mad at everybody else, and you invest in blaming everybody else, and you invest in you're not going to do what reality says, but you're going to invest in your delusions that you don't care who you hurt, you're going to end up right where you're planning to be. You're going to end up right where you're planning to be. Destroyed. If rich white men can't get away, you can't either. Side note to the side note on this. The obsession about relationships and what is going wrong is a version of the same thing. All we're doing is sitting up talking about our relationships with each other. That does not make us any money, and nor does it help us build any capital. And how do I know that this is not going well? Because Tony Gaskin said a long time ago, there's no money in relationship coaching. And he pointed out something that Steve Harvey entered the field and exited not long after his book was finished selling because there wasn't enough sustained money. There are not enough people interested in forming relationships that are stable and can build family and community. There's not enough people interested in that. I'll give you another good metric. Beneficial Black Man has an amazing channel. He's also married to an amazing woman, Alicia Renice, the artist. She has an amazing channel too. Do you think that they rank with the genocide promoters who want to talk about everything that's wrong with their counterparts? Here you have a beautiful married couple, Black. You think they get the eyeballs? No. because there's not enough people interested in healthy relationships. They're interested in vindicating, pointing fingers, and confirming themselves in their despair. But here, you see, sex makes no money. I mean, just as an act, nothing happens there. Now, you could be a pimp or a prostitute, but you're still, in most cases, and there are some people that have traded that up to a duplex and all the rest, but on average, the obsession about you still have to systematize it in some way. And when you systematize it in some way, you have now made yourself a chief of destruction. It's like Stockton Rush died having made himself the chief tour guide to the only wreck bigger in hubris than his own. He made himself a chief of destruction. Your grifting leaders in BWE and the Black Manosphere are chiefs of destruction. They have decided that this is the only thing that they can do. They are active despair with a plantation of people in active despair. Tony Gaskins also said one other thing. 2 or 3 years ago, he said that what's going to end up happening is people that do the work are going to be able to find their mates, and people that don't are going to be stuck. Everybody needs to choose better. If you are a Black man in active despair, no matter who a woman chooses or chooses to stay single, she's a better choice than you. Because even if you're going to say you fall in love with one, you're going to act like a bigot. I hate everybody else in your group, but I like you. That's like saying I have Black friends. This is what worries me about Anton Daniels' family. He has a wife and he has a young daughter. What's he going to do if this daughter comes up pregnant? And since I normally would not mention this, but since he had the temerity to suggest the murder of the genocide of 4.25 million Black women, now we got to talk about it. What's he going to do? What's he going to do when his wife doesn't go along with the shenanigans? Since this man ideates about murdering Black women, when she divorces him, if she does this, she'll be a single mother. Now what? Huh? Anybody should choose better than a man like that, because that is saying, I hate your whole phenotype, but you're going to be an exception as long as you do what I want you to do. As long as I can control you, you'll be the exception. When I can't control you, you go down to the status of everybody else that I want to destroy. That's what you're playing with when you play with a man like that. And ladies, any gentleman can choose better and have any race than a woman who has the same attitude. Members of Black women's empowerment are also suggesting genocide. You have the women who are out here calling human beings bully bags. You have women out here who are saying that Black men are not human. That's the same lie as Adolf Hitler. That's the same lie as everybody that ever held us in slavery. So any man of any race who cares about humanity should choose better and not choose you, which is another reason why you're not going to sit up there and talk about your counterpart and marry up and out in the end, no matter who you are. This is why the angry biracial is so angry, because he said so many biracial children understand that their Black father hated them himself and wanted to make a baby of a different image because he hated himself, meaning that all that father had to pass on was self-hate. He said that in a recent video. A Black woman who hates half the race basically has done the same thing. So what you've become is a mirror of self-hatred. Anybody who's going to sit up here and talk about aborting your own Black sons because he is in the image of the Black man you chose to lay down with and become like the sixth baby mama, uh, hates Blackness. Because you can't hate half of it and not hate all of it. So you're not going to hate Black women and children and not say that you don't hate Black people. You're not going to hate Black men and their sons, Black men and boys, and not say you don't hate Black people. You hate more than 2/3 of the race. That's a majority. We done. And anywhere, 67% is a majority. So here's the other reason why, because no one else has to deal with that. So we will continue to be outmaneuvered as a collective, capitalistically. We will continue to be overlooked collectively for advancement in civilized things. And we will continue to point fingers at one another and stay in the fourth stage of grief of active despair until everything around us implodes. And if you're honest about the communities that we have lost in the last 40 years, yes, the United States government is responsible for having put guns and drugs and liquor stores in the community ferociously. Yes, but why did we turn to all this to cope? Because we refuse to look at our active situation. Our great grandparents did not do this in general. They managed to keep things moving forward even under segregation. They believed that better was coming. We decided that in integration, we were supposed to just be honorary white folks. And when that didn't happen, we have not completed our 5 stages of despair of grief. So now we pointing fingers at other Black adults about why we can't live as honorary white folks and have all our consumer dreams come true. That's what's going on. And if you get stuck in this paradigm, you also are, if you decide that you're going to park here in that fourth stage and stay put, welcome to the. There is room in the permanent underclass for you. There is room in the permanent underclass for you. Though millions may come, there's still room for one. There is room in the permanent underclass for you. The Bible talks about the pit yawns deep and wide. We haven't even talked about this from a Christian's perspective, where ego, pride, malice send you to hell, straight down. So it's not just you implode, then you got to go a level down. We're not even talking about that right now. This is general. But you're not going upward, tied up in murderous ideations. You're not going upward, blaming everybody else who is your counterpart, your brother or your sister, for everything that's going wrong with you when opportunity is all around you. You're watching this on YouTube. You can learn how to do anything on YouTube, good or bad. There's all kind of opportunity. There's all kind of people in your image who are doing all these wonderful things and improving their lives. If you are wasting your time watching other people being mad at other people all the time, that's on you. There will be no justification received, nor will there be any excuse accepted. You are in the middle of plenty of opportunity to be able to learn better and choose better. There are all kinds of Black content creators that you can watch in the description of this video instead of feeding your mind on foolery. Man or woman, I don't care. You will mirror each other into the permanent underclass. There is no other possibility, because no other race of people is going to put up with this, since most of them are invested in not being at the bottom themselves. Therefore, we have to stay put. Did I mention how their greater access to capital allows them to outmaneuver us politically, educational wise, and in industry, which means there's hardly a way up anyway? They're not going to just move aside and let us up and take our place at the bottom. So when you accept that this is the reality, when you find out our net worth is going to be absolutely zero as a collective, zero, nothing, in a mere 6 years and 3 months, if the projections stay on course and we don't change course, and you want to still sit up there and be mad, all right. I just did the song for you. I'm not going to do it again. See, I wanted to present this in the most loving way possible, but I need you to understand. The beneficial Black man in his video said, he quoted from Leviticus, talking about why Black men are struggling. He said, what's essentially happening is what's happening in Leviticus. When you refuse to do things that God has called you to do, the land will vomit you out. And he said, in black men mistreating black women who have been their biggest supporters and who have worked. And there's history on this, gentlemen. I don't want to hear it. Your problems with whoever it was that did not do you right in childhood, at school, in high school, have nothing to do with all the stuff that women from Harriet Tubman to Mary McLeod Bethune to Ida B. Wells to Fannie Lou Hamer to Angela Davis, all these people who all the way along made it possible for black people to have something and also carried the men half the time. These are historical documents and evidence. The reason that you have anti-lynching laws is not because of Adam B. Wells, it's because of Ida B. Wells. She documented this. She was married. Do you think her husband was doing that with her? No, he was not. He was not. Now, she did live to survive all this, so we're going to be kind and say he was doing a decent job protecting her during that time period. Don't know for sure. I have to look that up. If there was a Harriet Tubman, there wouldn't be a Harriet. In fact, a commenter mentioned that one of both of Harriet's husbands abusive. That's correct. One of them threatened to put her back into slavery if she did not please him. So she had to leave him, and she loved him, and she hated that. But she left him. She came back to get him. He had a whole nother woman there. However, Miss Tubman leveled up. She got herself a veteran of the United States Colored Troop, a man who stood up for the people. They raised a child successfully. They were married 20 years, and life went on for her. That other man lost in the dust of history. Mr. The first husband, ain't nobody give two dead flies about him. He's only here to be mentioned as part of the shame parade. That's it. Just being disrespected every day. Because that's what happens. And ladies, you will not be excused. You too can become a byword to the world. See, if you copy the bad behavior, you get the same results. The laws that run the universe don't care who you are. If you go down with some stainless steel and wrap it with some plastic and some carbon fiber, and you go down to 12,500 feet and your ship isn't made for all that, and you were supposed to replace that hull 2-3 trips ago and you didn't bother to do that, physics doesn't care who you are. It wasn't checking for, is it just white folks who are rich on here? Okay, I need to leave them alone because they have the complexion for the protection. So physics need 12,500 feet, just back off. No, wouldn't matter what color they were. You take on physics, you're gonna die. Real simple. The laws of the universe do not care. The soul that's in it, it shall die. Laws of the universe do not care. The one who's running it does care, which is why he gave everybody a way out through Jesus Christ. But you just go ahead and stay with foolery. This way you're going eternally. It is what it is. We're speaking generally, but you will see this, like I was explaining the Trinity to folks in class, and people have learned about multiplication says 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. Algebra says 1 to the third power is still 1. So we have triunities. We know that the first shape that can be made from straight lines is a triangle. And we know that matter exists as solids, liquids, and gases. You have triunities everywhere. The laws in the creation, as Romans 1 said, reflect the laws of the creator. But no, just keep being out here pointing fingers at everybody else. Keep making it everybody else's fault that you can't handle reality. Keep making it everybody's fault that you don't do what you can do that's in front of you to better your condition. Keep on coming up on YouTube and pushing the algorithms of these grifters who are chiefs and chieftainesses of destruction. Keep on doing the foolery. The permanent underclass and death will be your lot. You have been warned. The permanent underclass and death will be your lot. And not only will it be you, everything and everyone who is unfortunate enough to not be able to choose better and get away from you. You have been warned. These are your choices. Get on to dealing with reality or come on down here. That's your choices. That's it. That's all. You want to pause in the fourth stage? You want to make active despair your lot? Fine. There you go. And ladies, don't get it twisted. Cynthia G and the Black women empowerment women who have stayed in the space are just a little bit younger than Kevin Samuels. That bitterness and despair is going to eat them up just like everybody else. It's just they're a little bit younger. And estrogen protects us, and blackness protects us. A Black woman's average lifespan is between 71 and 81, 72 and 81 years on average. A Black man's lifespan is 66, 72. So you look at some of these Manosphere figures who have died in their 40s and their 50s, they lost 15 years off their life. Well, that means that we only have about another 10 years before these Black women content creators who are just as wicked begin to experience the same thing. And then when you look at how long they should have lived compared to how long they live, then you're going to realize the same thing's going to happen. You out here telling women to go out here and pick up STDs with Black men and then abort the baby. So you're gonna mess with all that down there twice over, three times over, have all kind of people up and down in there with different members of their body and different instruments who don't care about you. You're gonna stay out here and let other medical people that don't care whether you live or die and only 50 years ago, 60 years ago wanted to sterilize you anyway, but you just gonna tell women that since they can't control themselves, they should just go out there and keep doing this. You're gonna keep telling men that they should go out there and collect STDs from around the world and spread them around the world. You're gonna keep telling men that it's cool for them to create public health emergencies and other. I will never forget Themis and Dolph talking about how the amount of STDs being spread around is becoming a public health crisis in Jamaica, where he's from. I will never forget the look on his face and the heartbreak. I will never forget that. It's okay for you to you gonna think, man, you wonder why you getting run up out of different countries and why you're becoming a byword and people are beginning to say, oh, you were exactly what they told you were. Because you know, we were told 400 years ago that y'all couldn't control your lust and that you were a savage, and since you causing public health crises, and as the American dollar falls, you don't have enough dollars to make a difference. So we don't want you here. It's why you're getting run out of town and getting executed in China. When the passport bros try that on a Chinese woman? Uh-huh. Yeah. You're on death row about to be executed. Ain't nobody about to go your bail. It's like we can't get Andrew Tate out of Romania. He's probably not gonna get out of there because there's nothing anybody can do about it. All his followers are carrying on. And by the way, Kevin Samuels is turning into dust. There ain't nothing anybody can do about it. But if you invest in this kind of foolery, you are missing every opportunity to do the things that tend toward this. You have been warned. I still love y'all. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't be bothered. But I actually have not had a funeral for care. I have real concern. I have concern about your children. See, this is the thing. At the end of the day, it is a shame to live in active despair when love is always available. Even in a general sense, you do not have to sit in despair and die. You do not have to spend in despair and take everything around you with you. That's a choice. That's a choice to sit in number 4 and not move out. That's a choice. Choice is yours. You have been warned. Y'all have a good day now. Think about it. Consider what I'm saying. Consider what you're watching. Consider how you feed your mind. I put in front of you what the choices are and what they will lead you toward. Bye. Thank you for listening. Rough sledding. If you stayed to the end, you got enough courage to make it out.